Today we're going to go through the process of putting in a hot patch in drywall. This is a quick and easy method for making an almost invisible patch for any hole that you have in your drywall, and is far easier than dealing with drywall tapes, at least in my opinion. I'll be doing this on the ceiling of my parents' bathroom, where we relocated the exhaust fan for the bathroom and we're left with a large hole for where it used to be. If the hole you're working with is an odd shape, start off by cutting the hole to make it square, or at least close to it. The hole I'm working with was already square-ish, so I didn't have to do that here. Once you have the hole squared up, go ahead and measure the size of it. I think mine was like 10 by 8 or something, I don't remember. Once you have your measurements, go ahead and begin putting those measurements onto your drywall. In the video here, I put them on both the front and the back to make it easier to see the lines, as I wasn't sure if they'd show up well on the brown backing paper. When marking your lines, add 2 inches to each side of the hole. So if your hole is 10 inches wide, you'd mark a line at 2 inches, 12 inches, and then 14 inches, so that way there is 2 inches of drywall paper on either side of the hole. In the last shot, you saw that there was wood covering the hole with drywall screws holding it in. With this type of patch, if you're working with a hole smaller than 12 by 12, you don't necessarily need to screw it into a piece of wood, as the patch actually is strong enough to support itself. But anything larger, and you'd want a piece of wood around to attach it to. I'll do another video in the coming weeks showing that process. The only reason for the wood in this case was because my dad didn't want an open hole into the attic before I had time to patch it, so we tossed a piece of wood up there and screwed it in. Once you have your lines marked out, go ahead and cut your drywall to size. Size being 4 inches larger than what you measured, due to the 2 inches of extra drywall on each side. Once it's cut out, you should have a grid on your piece of drywall that looks similar to mine. Your square in the center, as well as the 2 inches additional on each side. Now, assuming you already marked the backside of your drywall originally, you'll have your grid on the brown backing paper. but I have to do that here real quick, so I'll speed up the video for that so we're not watching me do the same slow and tedious process twice. Now that it's marked out, we need to cut the marked areas. All you have to do is gently score through the brown backing paper with your razor blade for each line. I recommend using a straight edge, or a ruler in my case, to make sure you get a nice and straight cut. Once you have all of your lines scored and cut through, you just snap the drywall along the lines. If you have a longer section, you can use a straight edge to apply pressure across the whole area. Once it's snapped through, you just peel the sheetrock off and away, leaving only the front paper. Remove any extra pieces that didn't come off cleanly, and clean up your lines to get a straighter edge. I just use the razor blade and scrape sideways across the little extra bits of drywall that need to be removed. Once you have it cleaned up and squared up, go ahead and do a test fit to make sure it actually fits where you're going to be putting it. Sometimes you have to clean up the edges of the hole a little bit to get a nice and tight fit. You want your piece to be a snug fit. The final part for putting the patch in is to put your mud onto the patch and place it in. I used hot mud, which is the mud you mix up by adding water to it, but you can also use the bucket of mud you buy from your big box stores. It just takes longer to dry. Take your putty knife and add a gratuitous amount of mud around all four sides. This will make sure that the mud squeezes out and bonds to the existing drywall, and fill any gaps or voids. Once the sides are done, paint the backside of the paper flaps, making sure to coat them in mud. The vast majority of this will be squeezed out after we place the patch on the wall, or ceiling in my case, but this helps ensure that there are no bubbles or voids. You can also put mud on the hole itself, but I opted not to do it for this patch since it's on the ceiling, and I'm not really a fan of mud falling on my head. I also put mud in the center of the patch due to having a wood backing. If this was a hole without a backing, I would not put any mud here, but this will ensure that my patch stays up without screws before I add them in. And now the fun part, setting your patch in and beginning the mudding process. This has to be done no matter what type of patch you use, and this can start to show where this type of patch really shines. The hardest part of patching drywall is matching the two pieces to make them look flush and the same. With this type of patch, the drywall paper is much thinner than traditional drywall tapes and creates a more seamless finish with much less work. I started off screwing my patch in since it had the wood backing, but you can see how well it stayed before I put my screws in. A nice tight fit and a good amount of drywall mud will make just about anything stick amazingly well. Once it's in, it's time to take your larger drywall knife and begin squeezing out the mud we put on the paper flaps. Keep your knife at around a 45-degree angle and apply moderate pressure to the edge of the knife to squeeze out the mud. A thin layer on the inside ensures there will be no bubbles. After you've gone across all four sides, it's time to add your mud to the center of the patch and the surrounding area. When patching drywall, you typically have to go about 12 inches for the human eye to not notice the patch. Load up your drywall knife with mud and begin applying it at around a 60 to 80 degree angle, smoothing it out as you go. I always opt to start with a lower angle when I place the knife and then flatten it out more as I carry it across the area. This will take 2 coats with minimal sanding in between, depending on your skill with drywall mudding. My first few times required quite a bit of sanding. I would show the finished product beyond the first layer, but my father just sanded the patch and has left it there for about 2 months, as it's almost invisible even without the second coat of mud. The thumbnails actually have what it looks like to this day. But that's all that we've got for this video. As always, if you like the content I'm putting out, make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all new content as it comes out. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.